Winter in Calgary can get cold, but it's a dry cold, and when the snow does come, it might not stick around long. When there's heavy snowfall day after day after day, that puts Calgary's snow clearing plans to the test and can also test people's patience. For some, where the city lets the snow lie leaves much to be desired. There are places in Canada that take a different approach. Some would say a better approach. Here's a temperature check on Calgary's snow clearing.
Main roads get cleared fast, suburban areas get cleared less fast, kind of what we would expect for a city. So, yeah.
I think they do the best that they can with the resources they're given. I think it's definitely something that we could put more energy and more money into.
They need to spend a little more money on snow removal. You see people driving, skidding up these hills.
Would you pay more in taxes or anything like that if it meant that kind of service, or how do you feel?
No, they waste money on lots of other things. The things they should be spending money on is snow removal.
Calgary's snow budget is about $55 million a year. That pays for clearing the following once a snowfall ends: 8,000 lane kilometers of major roads and transit routes down to the pavement, which is just shy of 50% of its roadways, within 36 hours. 750 kilometers of pathways and cycle tracks, and 550 kilometers of sidewalk within 24 hours. Private property owners are responsible for 90% of sidewalk clearing.
Residential roads don't enjoy the same urgency. The standard for those roads is a level, hard-packed driving surface, not cleared to the pavement. When things aren't level, the city will smooth things out with graders, but they don't patrol these areas for problems until 3 to 7 days after the snowfall finishes.
There are other cities clearing residential roads and even sidewalks. Let's shop around and see what those other snow plans look like in terms of things like amount spent, when and if residential roads get cleared, and what happens to the snow. We're going to follow a tier system. Think cell phone plan or cable bundle. First up, Montreal, the Platinum Snow Clearing Plan. This city really spares no expense. For $200 million a year, Montreal is clearing snow in residential areas once there's 2.5 centimeters on the ground. If there's 10 to 15 centimeters, that snow is getting loaded into trucks and hauled away. Sidewalks? The city does that too.
Montreal spends about 5 times what we do per kilometer of road for winter service. And so we'd be looking at something in the region of $265 million to be equal to Montreal's level of service, just sort of based on those high-level numbers. You're looking at their program, they remove a lot of snow from roads. There's a lot of infrastructure that's related to that in terms of snow dump sites. Montreal has 11 snow dump sites. The city of Calgary has 3. And so you have a really big capital cost up front to be able to do that type of program.
Let's go down a notch to the gold tier, Ottawa. So for about $92.5 million a year, Canada's capital isn't necessarily removing snow the way Montreal does, but residential streets get a plow pass after 7 centimeters of snow. Sidewalk clearing, Ottawa does that too. Crews get to work once there's 2.5 centimeters on the ground.
Ottawa comes in somewhere between Calgary and Montreal. Ottawa is spending about $6,300 per kilometer on their winter service, so about a little over twice what we're spending. If we were to spend somewhere in the region of $110 million, given our size, that's where you could sort of be in line with the budget to kilometer ratio that Ottawa has.
If you're thinking, okay, what about a pay-as-you-go approach? How much for Calgary to just clear all of its sidewalks? The city says that'll cost $20 million. Calgary does have one thing going for it, though. It's not as snowy as some other cities. Look at this data from Edmonton, Ottawa, and Montreal. They're in the lead when it comes to big snow dumps. Calgary and Toronto, they trail behind. This city also gets a break from winter, thanks to a warm, dry wind that brings some serious temperature swings. The snow eater, commonly called the chinook, a phenomenon that famously took actor Leonardo DiCaprio by surprise while he was filming in Alberta. While this weather pattern is hard to predict, Environment and Climate Change Canada has previously said Calgary sees about 25 chinook days per winter, which roughly calculates out to a temperature swing every 3 to 4 days.
There's like this discussion that always happens around, well, we have Chinooks, and so that's why we're not spending as much.
So I don't think we take Chinooks into account from a budgeting perspective, but the reality is that with variable weather, we do get more warm days than most winter cities. We get a lot of really cold days as well, but we have a lot of up and down in our weather, a lot of freeze-thaw cycles. And so there are pros and there are cons to that.
Let's say we didn't get as many Chinooks one year, would that affect how our snow operations work?
So we've had years, where we've had much more prolonged cold. And when that happens, we have to adjust our services.
There is a downside with Chinooks. With snowmelt, there can be wintertime flooding, and when the temperature swings back into the negatives, all that melt turns into ice. It's the freeze-thaw cycle, the enemy of getting around in winter. To the question at hand, should Calgarians expect more from their snow budgets? The city will tell you it does what it can with the dollars available. They're always willing to do more, but the costs for that can pile up as quickly as the snow. Helen Pike, CBC News, Calgary.